A risk bow tie is one of the best tools that you can use if you are trying to understand and also communicate a risk to somebody else. It consists of 5 different component parts. First, you put your risk or your focal point in the middle of the bow tie. It doesn't matter if you can't quite articulate it or you don't quite know what it is yet. That is the purpose of the bow tie tool itself. So you've got your risk in the middle. The next step, so step number 2, is take one step to the right-hand side, which is where you find your consequences. So should that risk occur, what might be the potential good consequences, but also bad consequences that may potentially happen as a result of that risk? Now, if there are no consequences, that indicates to you that the thing you have put in the middle of your bow tie might not be a risk. It might in itself be a consequence. So move that over to the consequences column. If, however, you've got plenty of consequences, that will now tell you, do you want this risk to happen? At which point it will be an opportunity, or do you not want this risk to happen? In which case it will be a threat. So risk in the middle, consequences on your right. If you now deem this to be important enough so that it really is a risk, you now go over to the left-hand side, and this is where you have your causes. Now, the first time you do this bow tie, the suggestion is to think about all of the different causes that might directly or indirectly lead to that risk in the middle of your bow tie occurring. Remember, we're talking about the causes of the knot in the middle of the bow tie because it needs to flow through that before going out into your consequences. This now gives you your causes, your risk, and your consequences, which is your basis of how you would usually articulate a risk. So if you're trying to explain that risk to somebody else, you can use a bow tie to help you do it. And you can say, as a result of all of your different causes, there's the potential for the risk to occur, which could result in all of your different consequences. Simple. The final 2 steps of your bow tie are where we actually work out what on earth to do about the risk itself. So we have proactive controls and we have reactive controls. Every organisation, every industry uses different language and terminology with regards to controls. But to keep it simple, our proactive controls are those controls that will help us to either make the risk happen or not make the risk happen, depending on whether it's an opportunity or threat. So they are proactively effective with regards to that risk happening. So they fit in between your causes and your risk. The reactive controls are controls that don't have any inference on whether the risk itself is actually going to occur, but once the risk has happened, they will help you to manage those consequences. So they are only effective after the risk has occurred and will help you manage those consequences. So what we have now are our causes, our proactive controls, the risk itself, our reactive controls, and of course our consequences. The final thing to mention with regards to a bow tie is how it can help us communicate the status of a risk to another person. The consequences can help you put together your business case. So what is the value of managing that risk? Your causes can help you identify some of those key risk indicators. So what are the leading indicators that will give you an indication of whether that risk is more or less likely to happen given what is going on in the wider world? And finally, those proactive and those reactive controls will give you that suite of action planning or perhaps effectiveness of controls that you need to look for to help you understand, do we actually have this risk under control enough so that it is sitting in that sweet spot within our risk appetite and our risk tolerance. So risk bow ties can be kept super simple. You can do a first pass of one of these bow ties in approximately 7 minutes. It's a really good interactive tool to run in workshops, but you can then make them much more complicated and much more detailed. You can spend weeks on these bow ties, but they can be used as really useful dashboards or the sources of which controls do you really need to have in place in order to make sure that your risk is truly managed.